When someone goes missing in the wilderness, search and rescue expects to find a body, or nothing at all. What they don't expect is to find signs that someone else was there first. Story 1. I was on call that night because the park ranger had reported a missing hiker, a woman in her 30s who'd set out for a solo night walk on the Ridge Trail. The forecast called for a low-grade snowstorm, wind up to 15 miles an hour, and temperatures dropping below zero. We had 2 sleds, a rope team, a K9 unit, and a handheld GPS that would stop transmitting once we left the marked trail. The first thing we did was set up the base camp at the trailhead and brief the team. I handed out radios, checked the dogs' harnesses, and reminded everyone that the forest could swallow a voice as easily as it could a footprint. There was no drama in my voice. It was just a list of tasks. We entered the woods at 1900 hours, the light already fading. The pine canopy was dense. The trail was a thin strip of compacted snow that quickly gave way to loose drifts. The first hour passed with the usual rhythm. The sleds creaked, the dogs sniffed, the radios crackled with occasional check-ins. I watched the GPS screen. It showed a small orange dot moving away from the trail, then disappearing into a blank area marked "No data." No one was surprised. In this part of the park, the signal drops out for miles. We found a boot print, a single set, about a dozen centimeters wide, crossing a shallow ravine about a kilometer from the last known point. The print was fresh. The snow around it still held the faint imprint of a handheld pole. The search team followed it, but as we moved deeper, the tracks vanished, subsumed by a fresh gust of wind that flattened the snow. The dogs picked up a scent on the side of a tree, something musky, like wet wool. But the trail was already gone. At around 21:30, we reached an old fire lookout cabin that had been abandoned for years. The door was ajar, the interior dark, the only light coming from the headlamp we held. Inside, a single wooden chair faced the window, and on the floor lay a half-filled thermos, still warm. No other items were present. The thermos had a faint coffee smell. The coffee was still steaming. The only clue on the table was a torn piece of a map, the edge frayed as if ripped away quickly. We called the ranger over the radio, described the scene, and waited. The wind outside rose, a low whine that filled the cabin. The dog, a German shepherd named Atlas, sat at the doorway, ears forward, tail stiff. He let out a short, low bark, then fell silent. We spent the next hour combing the surrounding area, but found nothing else. The GPS never re-registered a signal. The ranger's voice over the radio grew thin. "We've got a night shift. We'll pull back to base and regroup at first light." I felt the cold seep through my gloves as we turned to leave. When we stepped back onto the trail, the snow was freshly disturbed, as if someone had walked past moments ago. I did not see a human shape, but the trail ahead seemed to widen, the darkness deeper. We left the cabin behind, the door swinging gently in the wind, the faint steam from the thermos still visible through the cracked glass. We never found the hiker. The search was called off at dawn, the area marked as unresolved. I still think of that thermos, still warm, and the chair turned toward the window, as if someone had just stepped away. The forest doesn't give answers. It only keeps them hidden. Story 2. I was on call that afternoon because the park ranger's radio had crackled with an urgent request. A hiker, a 42-year-old woman named Lila Ortiz, hadn't been seen for 12 hours. She'd set out from the trailhead near the river at dawn, intending to finish a loop that passed the old fire lookout. The last checkpoint she'd passed was the Eagle's Nest Ridge, where the trail forks. Her phone showed a weak 4G ping at 9:12 a.m., then went dark. Our team, 3 of us, a veteran SAR leader, a medic, and myself as the navigation specialist, arrived at the ranger station at 10:30. The sky was overcast, the wind a low whine through the pines. The ranger handed us her last known coordinates, a GPS track that stopped abruptly near a small clearing, marked on the map by a faded orange dot. He warned us that the clearing was near the Stonefield Swamp, a low-lying marsh that had flooded after last night's rain. We set off at 11 o'clock, following the trail at a steady pace, radios set to a quiet channel. The forest grew denser, the path turning to loose gravel. By the time we reached the ridge, the wind had picked up, and the sky had taken on a slate hue. We found the clearing, a shallow depression with a tangle of cattails and a small stagnant pool. The GPS point was right in the middle. There was no sign of Lila. No backpack, no shoes, nothing. The only thing that stood out was a half-bent pine branch, snapped cleanly about a foot from a clump of fern. It was as if someone had shoved it there. I crouched, brushed aside the fern, and saw an imprint, a set of footprints, but not human. They were small, five-toed, and pressed into the soft mud, angled away from the pool, disappearing into the taller reeds. The prints were fresh. The mud around them was still damp. We radioed back. No visual. Found recent tracks. Not human. The leader asked us to keep searching the perimeter, but the swamp made progress slow. The medic noted a faint odor, like damp earth mixed with something metallic. I could hear the radio's static and the distant call of a jay, but nothing else. After an hour of winding through the reeds, we reached a narrow boardwalk that spanned a deeper part of the swamp. It was half collapsed. One of the planks hung precariously, swaying with each gust. The boardwalk led to a small wooden platform, half covered in moss. On it, we found a single dark blue hiking boot, the leather cracked, the laces frayed. The boot was turned inside out, the sole exposed, as if someone had taken it off in haste. No other equipment lay nearby. The ranger's radio crackled again. "Search team, do you have a location?" I replied. "We're at the platform. Coordinates 38 degrees 45 minutes 12.3 seconds north, 122 degrees 17 minutes 4.9 seconds west. No sign of the hiker, only these boot and odd footprints." Silence answered. The wind grew louder, rustling the reeds in a way that sounded almost like whispering. We waited, listening for any sign, any scream, any call. Nothing came. After another half hour, we decided to pull back, marking the site with a flag. We never found Lila. The boot remained on the platform, the strange footprints fading as the rain soaked them away. The ranger's office later received an anonymous note. "She walked into the marsh and never left." No one could confirm who wrote it or what happened that day. Even now, when I pass the Eagle's Ridge on routine patrols, I sometimes see a single boot half buried in the mud, and the wind still carries that faint, unsettling rustle through the reeds. Nothing that can be explained, and nothing that can be dismissed. The search is over, but the question remains. Story 3. I've spent a decade with the search and rescue team, but nothing prepares you for the quiet kind of wrongness. It started with a call about a hiker, a woman named Clara Voss, lost in the Red Creek wilderness. Her GPS tracker pinged near a ridge, then nothing. The team fanned out, crunching through frost-laced pine needles, our headlamps cutting narrow paths through the fog. We found her water bottle first, half buried in the dirt. It was still full. That didn't make sense. Her last sighting was 12 miles south. I held it up to my face, checking for lip yin. Something personal to confirm. There was a smudge of crimson, but not Clara's. Too bold for her lipstick. We kept moving. The second day, we found her hiking poles, bent double, like she'd used them to brace against a collapse. No sign of a fall. The third day, we found her backpack, dangling from a low branch, zipped tight. Inside, untouched peanut butter, a guidebook open to the map page, a pen cap with a faint initials, JL, scrawled on it. Not hers. Not anyone on the team's. The forest grew quieter as we pushed deeper. Birds stopped their usual chatter. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. We split into pairs. I walked with Martinez, a 20-year veteran who'd found 3 bodies but never the living. He kept glancing at his compass, muttering about the magnetic reading fluctuating. "Rocks," he said, though the rock count hadn't changed. On the 5th day, I heard it. A voice, low and muffled, not unlike the crunch of boots in leaves. I froze. Martinez paused too. "You hear that?" I asked. He shook his head. We scanned the trees, the ridge, the fog. Nothing. My radio crackled. Dispatch said another team had heard a similar sound near the creek, but no visuals. The 6th day, we found the shoes. One tucked neatly under a root, the other dangling from a tree like a scarecrow. They were men's trail runners, not Clara's, not Martinez's, not anyone's we knew. I took a photo, but the file came out blurred, just splotches and shadow. By the 7th day, the forest felt aware. Not hostile, just watched. We looped back to the last confirmed coordinates, but the GPS readings had shifted. The ridge we'd seen on day 1 was now a half-mile west. Martinez didn't question it. He just recalibrated and we kept going. On the 8th day, we called it off. No body, no clear trail. Just the eerie stillness, the misplaced gear, the feeling of being followed by something that left no prints. They gave Clara a memorial service, but no closure. I still hike there sometimes. Not for lost people, but for the silence. It's thicker now, like the trees are holding their breath. And sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I hear footsteps behind me. Not on the ground, up in the branches. I don't radio for backup. It's probably just the wind. Probably.